And we are live. Everybody, welcome to the Constitution Roundtable, episode number 28. With me today is Douglas V. Gibbs. I, of course, am Brady, also known in some corners of the internet as the War Hamster. Our regular host, it says Channel Andrew, the Citizen 1776, will be joining us shortly. He was out to dinner with the family. Time changes getting him with his recent move. And Doug was with me a second ago, but he just dropped out. So once again, for about the fifth time in the last couple months, I find myself starting a broadcast alone with no prepared monologue whatsoever. I think I'm just going to have to start with monologues prepared because these live streams happens a little bit too often. And there is Mr. Gibbs.
Yeah, there we go. This is what happens when I'm not in front of my computer. So I am on my way home, and I apologize, but it is what it is.
Well,
yeah. This is typically not my, what I like to do, but unfortunately, I juggle a lot of things all at once.
Yeah, well, I get it. I've been busier than a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest lately myself.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, the hardest part is, I went from having more free time than God, during the first couple of years of lockdowns to having working more hours than I ever have. And, what are you going to sacrifice? And it's, I still got time to do my homework and my research, but you can't go quite as much in depth when you actually have things to do.
Right.
But,
I was meeting with a computer guy that has helped me out with a lot of my computer stuff today. And it just went longer than I thought. I suspected I would be home by now, but so be it.
No worries. It's good stuff to get your computer system rolling.
Yeah.
You've had a couple of technical issues lately.
Exactly.
Since what I'm doing with since the guys I'm working with on the new startup, they've dialed my tech in even more than I already had it. So I'm actually feeling like I'm part of the 21st century. It's like I'm driving a sports car on this laptop now.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
When it comes to my stuff, I am in the 21st century, but I'm only about a few minutes into the 21st century. That's the problem.
We'll get you there, my friend. So as usual, we have no topics planned, or I don't. But there's a lot going on.
Well, there is a lot going on, and I wanted to ask you, have you seen the story of J.P. Morgan saying that the government just needs to start taking property in order to do certain things?
Yeah, that was Jamie Dimon. And, I actually saw him speak in person in New York City back when I was working for the Wall Street banks, but it would have been around 2002. I was one of about 500 people at a place that he was a keynote speaker. He's a interesting guy, but he's risen to one hell of a position of power.
Well, the difficulty with that is that's not how eminent domain is supposed to work. And we have a government, I know it's shocking. They don't understand the original intent of what was put in the Constitution. So I know it's shocking, but if you don't mind, that was the first thing that came to mind. And I do want to maybe have a few words about it. It won't take too long, but a few words. And you've gone through the Constitution with me a few times, so you know where I'm going to go with when it comes to eminent domain and Amendment 5. That's where at the very, very end of Amendment 5, folks, if you're watching, it talks about eminent domain. It doesn't use those words. It basically says that land basically can be, it doesn't use the word taken, but I'm going to use that word because that's what they do. Taken.
Yeah, give me a second. I'll pull it up so everyone can read it.
All right, very good.
Just I got lost in the Constitution, so hang on.
Okay, very good.
I must have been reading elsewhere.
Yeah, Amendment 5 is what you're looking for. And for those of you who are following along at home and keeping score, and you've got a pocket Constitution handy or your computer handy, Amendment 5.
And it is coming up in 2 seconds. Should be good to go.
Yeah, I have a pocket Constitution on me, but I would read it if I wasn't driving.
No,
but
I'll read it.
So read what it says.
No person shall be held to answer for capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when an actual service time of war or public danger. That's not the part we're talking about, though.
No, keep going. Tail end of very end.
nor shall any person, well, I'll just go to the end where it is. Nor shall be compelled in it. Nope, here it goes. Nor shall he be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property, here it is, be taken for public use without just compensation.
Okay, so private property cannot be taken without just for public use for just compensation. Number one, it's for public use. And what it means when it says public use is not necessarily a shopping mall and an apartment building like they claim. It's supposed to be meaning government use, so or that's for roadways or something like that. But the key words there is just compensation. Now, that story I just mentioned where it says J.P. Morgan, suggesting that land ought to be taken, and I'm trying to remember the details of it. I've got it on my computer, and because I'm driving home, I don't remember all the details. That story, if you have it available to you, sir, give us, if you can, a 1-minute synopsis, if you've got it, or if you remember it.
No, I'll track it down. But while I'm doing that, eminent domain didn't really start getting used until 1861. I mean,
right.
It's interesting why that's in there, because you'll find that those who favor the bigger government and crony capitalist partnerships always talked about internal improvements. And at the time of the founding, this was like building canals. And yeah, they actually said, yes, we can take your land to build canals. And they did that a few other times for the next 70 or 80 years. But when it came time for the railroads to be built, that's when it really got out of control.
Now, and I'll stop there for a second. When it came to those canals, remember that the first time it was recommended that federal funds be used for canals or roadways or boatways or whatever, including canals. The first time it showed up was in 1817 in a law called the Bonus Bill. And James Madison actually vetoed that and said, no, you can't use federal money. And we aren't even talking eminent domain yet. He just said you can't use federal money for the purpose of building canals. Originally, it was rejected.
Yeah, and that veto is one of my favorite, probably one of my favorite. I'd say it's one of my top 20 things in my bookmarked in reference to. It was very good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And remember, these amendments originally only applied only to the federal government. They're supposed to still only apply to the federal government. So we're talking. So eminent domain in the Fifth Amendment is basically saying federal government cannot take any land for public use without just compensation. But what's going to go along with that is land that can only be obtained and used for things that are constitutionally allowed, like military base, for example. Which means it has to be. Which means it would have to be purchased with consent of the state legislature. Doesn't necessarily have to be purchased from the state, but the legislature has to approve it, even if it's being purchased from a private party.
And who determines just compensation?
There's the question. What is just compensation? When I lead my classes and I ask my classes, what do you think just compensation is? And the first answer out of someone's mouth is always, I don't think it's ever been otherwise, fair market value. And immediately I say, nope, that's not what just compensation is. That's what we've been taught is just compensation. That's not what just compensation is. Just compensation is what the owner believes to be just. In other words, you. So if that is priceless land, they can't take it from you because nothing is just enough. No compensation is just enough. They cannot say, well, this is what's just to us. You just got to do it. That's not how it's supposed to work. So this idea that government can just take it and whatever they offer, they just got to take it because, and you got to accept their offer, whatever it may be, because they're giving you whatever the value. That's not how it's supposed to work. So this idea of then J.P. Morgan saying, well, the banking, I guess the bank company or whatever it is saying, well, you just take it in an eminent domain. They've got this idea. They've got this, and when I say they, I mean the ruling elite, the ruling powers, the power players, and so on, and the political knuckleheads. Hey, well, if it could just be taken. Well, what if the person says no? Well, it's the power of the federal government. might to the federal government. No, just compensation is what is just in the eyes of the owner. Property cannot be taken without due process. Unless, of course, there's compensation. The person says, okay, I'm good with that. That's just compensation. I'll accept that.
So,
Otherwise, you don't get the property.
So this stuff really started getting abused, like I said, right when the Civil War started, and at the same time, Lincoln was building his railroad. And,
Right.
If you stood in the way of the railroad, they were going to find a way to get you to sell. You saw
Right.
You saw it abused in the Wild West quite a bit with some of the cattle wars and stuff like that. And then we really got it. You just saw some of the worst legal abuses of this when it came to oil rights and oil wells. And this is the robber barons at their finest. Whether it be for the railroads or oil, what have you. And that's why the ultra rich have always wanted to have the crony capitalist mercantilist system. If they have politicians in their pocket, they can abuse things like eminent domain.
Right.
I found your article, and I am going to pop it up.
All right. Well, I'm about less than 5 minutes from my house. So what you're going to do is you're going to explain this, and in the meantime, I'm going to get home and then switch over to my computer. But I will be listening during that time. Go ahead.
Sir. Yes, sir. Let me make sure it's popped up on the screen. Good. All right. J.P. Morgan CEO suggests the government should seize private property for clean energy projects. And I'm going to read this nice and slow, so Doug has all the time in the world.
Go ahead.
J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said in his annual shareholder letter Tuesday that the government may need to seize private property to advance clean energy initiatives. I suppose we'll have to talk about what clean energy initiatives are and how ridiculous they are, since it's one of my favorite topics. But I don't seem to see a whole lot of mention of that in the Constitution either.
This is true. This is true.
It's interesting to start with. J.P. Morgan Chase was a combination of two of the oldest, most prestigious Wall Street banks. J.P. Morgan was always more of a private bank, and Chase was the actual bank owned by the Rockefellers, or controlled by the Rockefellers for years. Coming out of the financial crisis, Chase.
Yeah, isn't Chase named after Secretary of the Treasury at one point? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think it's Henry Chase, I believe it is, but that's he was another Rockefeller stooge, but it was a Chase Manhattan Bank originally.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, Samuel P. Chase, I think it was. Is the bank's named after, right?
Yeah, it's been a while since I read that. I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
But watching those two Wall Street giants merge was very interesting. It was during the financial crisis of 2009, and they also at the same time, it was either shortly before or shortly thereafter when Chase bought out rescued all the Washington Mutual branches. And that was a very interesting merger, different banking cultures altogether. But Washington Mutual had a lot of deposits, and that's why they wanted to do it. So throughout California, you see a bunch of former Washington Mutual branches. They're all now Chase. And I have never banked with them, and would choose not to do business if at all possible. I have competed with them, more J.P. Morgan. Going back to the article, Dimon discussed the need to quickly begin investing in solar projects and other green initiatives, and suggested that the government should use eminent domain to seize property for these projects. At the same time, permitting reforms are desperately needed to allow investment to be done in any kind of timely way. We may even need to evoke eminent domain. We simply are not getting the adequate investments fast enough for grid, solar, wind, and pipeline initiatives. We're not getting into the whole thing. We get the gist, and I'm glad you brought this up. This has been one of my favorite rants lately. But I may have talked about this on the air with you a little bit, but I can go into more detail today.
Okay.
Why is a bank who should only be worried about shareholder profits, protecting depositors, et cetera, why are they so involved in all of these woke concepts, especially climate change? I'm glad you asked, Doug, because there's a reason for it.
Okay.
Well, the banks are a very highly regulated industry, and of course, given all the leverage they use, they occasionally get themselves into trouble. Because it's never-ending seeking of profits, and sometimes the markets are unpredictable. Well, what happens is the government comes in there and says, and you'll get some activist administrations, and they'll come in there and they'll say to the bank, hey, we'll bail you out, we'll backstop you, we'll make sure none of you people go to jail, but there's a price. And the price is to have woke activists on your boards. It's to have some of these woke initiatives, and they wield the power. The activists wield the power of regulation over these banks' head, and of course they also say at the same time we're going to also get stiffer regulatory burdens to kill your competition. We're talking about the too big to fail banks. So you go back to 1994 with the Community Reinvestment Act. That's the Clintons, where they basically forced the banks to get involved in lending in neighborhoods where they otherwise would not have found profitable loans, inner cities. And of course, that gave us that led to all kinds of, eventually would lead to the housing crisis and the great financial crisis of 2008 and 9, because they were given loans that would never be paid back. Fast forward to 2008 and 9, interesting story that you're in there, Doug.
There we go. A little better.
Were you able to hear me?
I heard 90% what you said. I missed like the last 30 seconds.
All right. So the Community Reinvestment Act is put into place where the banks are giving loans in neighborhoods where the ninja loans, no income, no job, et cetera. But you had to make certain racial quotas, or they made them demographic quotas. So they called them underserved communities, I think was the word. It was the Community Reinvestment Act of 1994. Directly led to the great financial crisis, along with the deregulation of 1998 and 2000, which meant the banks got to stop playing by the rules that have been in effect since 1933 and 34, which are actually pretty good regulation. Probably the best thing that the FDR administration did. I had to memorize the Investment Company Act of 34 and 33 and 34. It's actually good regulation, but they took that away in 98. So fast forward, we get the great financial crisis in 08, 09, and these banks, big banks, are about ready to go under. Their balance sheets are a mess. Well, it's in the middle of a presidential campaign, and there's a really funny weekend happened in 2008. Obama on a Friday was down 5 points in a poll to McCain, and instead of going out on the campaign trail, Obama flew back to DC to New York, and met with a bunch of Wall Street bankers. He wakes up on Monday morning up 5 points in the polls and never looked back. Now, I surmise, and I have ever since that day, that a deal was cut. And you'll notice that not a single banker went to jail. They were all bailed out, and that's how the deal was cut. But again, that came with a price. And the Obama people were basically, they said, okay, we're going to have more of our people on your boards of director, and we want to have more social justice causes. Well, these are the biggest banks in the world, and they control, who gets funded by Wall Street and who doesn't. Well, that's pretty darn powerful. They have a lot of leverage over other corporations. And this is why you have woke companies like Anheuser-Busch pulling crap, like, putting a man dressed as a woman on a beer bottle and, losing $4 or $5 billion in market cap over a weekend. Although that is overstated. The Bud was up the last 2 days, but I think we haven't seen how much the boycotts of Budweiser or Bud Light's going to impact earnings yet. It's way too early. So I have the feeling the stock's got a lot further down to go, but that's right. Not investment. That's not investment advice. I just think it's funny with a lot of people are out there saying they lost $5 billion for this ad. Yeah, but this company's got like $190 billion market cap. It's not really that painful yet. In fact, the stock's still really near. It's 2 weeks off its 52-week high. So they're not in trouble yet, but there is damage to be done.
Now, was it you I was talking to the other day about the swill that Bud is?
Oh, no, but I would have agreed.
Someone was telling me that the reason for this problem, I'm trying to remember who it was now, and they said, well, a lot of people are thinking, it's because of what happened with the marketing and the individual that they stuck a face on the can of that caused all the problems. That person says to me, well, they've been on their way down as it is. Marketing is a part of it, but it's garbage. It tastes horrid. And now you're in a society where you have all these different options and these local. Oh, I remember who it was. Is Ryan from South Dakota, who I used to do a podcast with every once in a while, and has been pretty much following what I do since like 2007. But anyway. And he says, it's bad beer. They were already on their way down. This was just another nail in the coffin that helped people realize, I need to start drinking something else. There's a lot of competition out there, and it's you got basically two big companies, Miller and Bud,
and then maybe Coors is kind of in there. It's like like he was explaining to me before. I think it was the mid '80s. Coors wasn't even available in most stores, outside of Colorado and some of the western states. But he says it's just a bad product anyway. And they're not doing themselves any favors. They think that they're helping themselves, and they're hurting what's already a bad product that's already on its way out. Because, I mean, especially here in California, how many places can you go to where there's locally made brews that are on tap that are really tasty, really different, and really cold? And we go to a place like that. And matter of fact, in Carlsbad, often after Thursday class, you got all these choices. When you got competition, what happens to the nasty swill? It starts losing market. Then when the nasty swill says, oh, we'll try to fix it, we'll stick this Hishi on our can, what's going to happen? It's just going to get worse. So they're already in trouble, and all that was just another punch in the face to the consumers that already doesn't like their swill. So
what's interesting, one of the rebuttals, now, and I've known we were going to talk about this. I would have saved an article I read 2 hours ago, and I'm not going to be able to find it right now. But
I trust your memory.
Well, basically what they're saying is that the 10 biggest selling beers in America, either themselves or their parent companies, because everyone's mostly consolidated in 3 international alcohol companies, have some kind of an LGBTQ whatever plus relationship. So who are you going to boycott? Well, the funny story about all this is in 2016 during the campaign, the largest American-made beer, and I forget their name, they're out of Pennsylvania, I believe. Their CEO came out in support of Trump, and some local politician who was part of the
Samuel Adams, was it?
No, it's a different one. Something I never drank, but I'd heard of him.
Okay. Anyway, continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Long story short, well, this guy was part of the LGBTQ plus community, and he basically piled on, how can you support Trump? And they did the community did a nationwide boycott of that company, and now they're all complaining that how can you boycott? It's just it's just the whole thing is, these people are twisting it into a pretzel. But it's you don't have to take down all these woke companies. You just have to take down one, and that'll get people to reconsider what their audience really is, or who their market really is.
All right.
But I certainly don't need the chairman and CEO of one of the largest Wall Street banks talking to me about environmental policy and how they need to, basically take our property away for that, to segue it back to eminent domain. The big story this week is the 21-year-old Reserve Air National Guard guy who apparently had access to top level classified documents and leaked them over 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting that this comes on the heels of the what is that? What is Patriot Act 2.0 or the Restrict Act? Is that the one they just started? Yeah, which is crashing and burning. And
right.
So, and you look at who's reporting this and how quickly the FBI found this guy with the help of all of the big media companies, including the New York Times. And I'm just not buying the cover story right now of what this is all about. There's more to this than meets the eye, as always.
Right.
I mean, you were in the military. You've been near, somewhat sensitive information. Would a 21-year-old novice reserve guy have access to, that kind of information? Are they that incompetent?
He may have access, but it wouldn't be approved access. What I mean by that is, basically when I got in, I had a security clearance, but my clearance wasn't because I handled that kind of stuff, and I didn't have the rank or the time in service anyway to have the expertise to handle that kind of stuff. But because of what my job was, I was an admin guy, and I needed to be in the room because those guys who do have access, and it is important to them, somebody's got to type their stuff, or somebody's got to take the stuff that needs to be burned to the room where the radio men are going to burn it or whatever. So as a low ranking guy, I had the clearance, but not because I'm handling it, but as a as a part of my job, but I'm handling it because I'm basically somebody in the office or I'm around it. So that said, 19, he's probably then an E1, E2, E3. He's not going to be an E4 yet until 3 or 4 years in service at least. And so he's not going to be someone who they're like, all right, this is your job to handle all of this stuff. He's going to be a guy who's in the same room. So is it possible that he saw these documents that have a high clearance? It's very possible. He may have been in the room. It's because they don't only have, the high-ranking people. That said, I'm going to be very doubtful. Anything's possible in this day and age, so that's the reason I won't go 100%. But I'm very doubtful that his job was to handle it and work with it and so on and so forth. If he had a clearance, if he was around that kind of stuff, because his job called for it. And I believe in his case, what was an IT guy anyway. It was basically because he was going to be in the same room, or these files might cross his computer or something.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's one thing. Yeah, it's one thing to see it, but how do you actually have the ability to exfiltrate the information?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and so that's why I'm starting to wonder if this is just another, I don't know, game they're playing.
Well, I really do think it's to basically to try to, because why do I always forget the name of that act? It's Restrict Act, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be to stop TikTok, although the word TikTok isn't mentioned anywhere in the bill, and it basically allows the Secretary of Commerce to shut down anybody's right to use the internet whatsoever if he deems it. I mean, it's worse than the Patriot Act. It's got zero protections, and
Right.
they can take.
Well, there's no checks and balances at all in it.
No, not at all. And so with this thing crashing and burning, now we have this dangerous leak that's put out on the dark side of the internet, of the interwebs, and now you got all the politicians running around this weekend, and then they'll be doing the talk shows on Sunday, and they'll be talking about, see, this is why we had to protect national security, Doug. We've got to have control of the content of the internet, and that's what they're trying to do. Interestingly, we got the news that Mitch McConnell, after his fall, is actually perhaps about to step down from his position as minority leader, and all the rhinos are jockeying for position to be who gets to be the next head rhino. And
Right.
the betting, the betting odds are on John Thune, who happened to be the co-sponsor of this act, with, of course, Democrat Mark Warner, who sits on the Senate Select Committee of SSCI, Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, which, in my opinion, is the heart of the deep state, and they're the ones that actually should have egg all over their face, because they came out and confirmed the Steele dossier in 2018 and everything they said that they confirmed is now completely blown up in their face with the Durham investigation and other declassifications. So, anybody who's on the SSCI is 100% deep state, and that includes you, Marco Rubio, and you will never be trusted, and because you don't get on there unless you're playing the game. They very much control access to those halls of power. All right, I got another fun one for you, Doug. I don't know if you've seen this article. This one came out today on Zero Hedge, and it's along the same note. I'm going to read quite a bit of this one because it's worth it. There's some pretty nasty allegations. And here we go. Title is Joe Biden is a criminal, says ex-Obama whistleblower alleging family kickback scheme. I like where this is going. A former staffer who worked in the Obama administration is blowing the whistle on the Bidens and has accused President Biden of being involved in a kickback scheme directly related to his son Hunter's overseas business dealings. Okay, we've heard this before. Where it gets interesting is this guy McCormick was a stenographer in the White House for 15 years, and he worked with Biden from 2011 to 17. He said that the FBI has completely ignored him despite his willingness to testify under oath before the grand jury. That's the one in Delaware, investigating Hunter. In February, I went to the FBI and filed one of their tips on their website. If you do that and you're lying to them, you go to jail. I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth, and I'm not going to jail. Joe Biden's a criminal. He was conducting malfeasance in office to enrich his family. Jake Sullivan, our current national security advisor, national security director. Is that? Yeah, that's it. Is a conspirator in that, and there's more Obama officials involved in it, I believe. Who's basically saying is, without reading the whole thing, is a couple weeks before Joe Biden did his famous speech in Ukraine, Hunter had just gotten the job with Burisma, and Biden is out there trying to send $50 million to Ukraine a few weeks after, including a bunch of fracking technology and fracking investment, which directly benefits Burisma. He was on the plane when this conversation. Okay, here it is. I'll just read it. The next 3 paragraphs, that should be enough. McCormick specifically noted a key dialogue involving then VP Biden, aide Jake Sullivan, and the press on Air Force Two before an April 21st, 2014 trip to Ukraine, in which Sullivan, now Biden's national security advisor, outlined a U.S. investment in the Ukrainian energy sector just days after Hunter joined the board of Burisma. Doug, where in the competition and in the Constitution is the United States government supposed to be investing in the energy sector of a foreign country? I don't remember that clause.
I don't remember that clause either. Maybe it's on the good and welfare for the whole world clause.
Yeah. Exactly. So he goes, I'm sitting back there with a tape recorder. Jake Sullivan comes back and somebody asks about fracking. He answers, well, we're bringing a lot of American assistance over for fracking. Burisma was the direct beneficiary of that fracking, and that's what I recorded, and that's in a White House transcript. In the transcript, you don't know who Jake Sullivan is. It's a senior administration official, it says. I'm the witness that says Jake Sullivan is the guy who said it, and he should be investigated because at the time, Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma. And Joe Biden is bringing American taxpayer money to enrich that company and himself and his family. And it goes into some of the details we know about. Talks about if David Weiss can't have me in front of a grand jury, that's the AG in Delaware, explaining what I know as a witness, that's a fraudulent grand jury. It's a fraudulent use of the American judicial system to cover for Barack Obama and Joe Biden's crimes in office. And we've talked about this. You know, it pretty much everything that's happened with Russiagate, you know, Hillary's email, you know, it's basically been one committing a crime to cover up from stuff they've already done. They just don't want to be caught. Hey, look who joined us.
Yes. Hey, I want to say, while we're in the car and we had a moment to stop, I checked in on the show and I caught the part of the show where you were kind of like introducing yourself and like Doug when he wasn't there yet. See, Doug knows I'm about to say something funny. Anyway, so you were like, and there's Doug, and then I'm Brady, Warhamster, whatever, and then you were like, and Andrew will be here shortly, yada yada, and then you go, so I am introducing the show by myself for the 5th time.
Well, I think Doug's doing this on purpose because it's happened quite a bit lately.
Yeah, well, you know, I still haven't figured out how to clone myself, and like I tell people, the problem with cloning is that if I do start cloning myself, I have to feed those clones, I have to clothe them, and it might get expensive. So
hey, you could claim on your taxes though.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
Like I always call my kids, they're all. I tell this to everyone all the time. I'm like, hey man, kids are tax deductions.
Which you know, that's a sore subject with me. That's government picking winners or losers. I don't have any kids, unfortunately. So I have to pay a higher tax rate. Yeah, how is that fair? Why do people that are married get tax benefits?
Because we pay for it later when they grow up and become little jerks.
And we pay for it while they're, you know, here being little turds too.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love my dogs. Sorry.
Anything on your mind this week? Oh, Andrew just muted himself. I was going to say, Andrew, you got any topics you want to talk about?
Well, what about the Florida? One of the courts, I guess, accused the Biden administration of child trafficking.
I didn't catch that one. I'm gonna have to. Let me see if I can find something.
Yeah, it was a Florida Grand Court or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it said, but
I've got nothing.
Oh, I saw it somewhere. Oh, it was on the Epic. It was on the Epic Times.
Is that Epic Times or Epoch Times?
Maybe it's both ways.
Yeah,
I've always called it Epic Times.
Well, it's fun. It's funny. I at one of the Clay Clark events I attended, the Epic Times or Epoch Times had a booth, and I asked them, and there are two people standing there, and they both gave me the opposite answer. So I don't think they know. So one of these days, that'll be one of the great mysteries of the universe that we'll solve.
When I was friends, well, and I still friends with him, but he's not in the area. He moved to Arizona. With the guy that used to be the general manager in California for the Epic Times. He said it, but it wasn't Epic. It wasn't Epoch. It was kind of a closer to Epic, but it had this kind of interesting play on the second half of the word. So I don't think anybody knows. All right. So this anti-Chinese communist paper. Did we lose Andrew?
No, I'm right here.
Okay, we lost your face.
Oh, hey, Flora. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, and I've noticed that my camera video delays until I change it off of into a different resolution and go back to this resolution. Then for a while it's good, and then it starts to delay again. So,
well, we've got the
joys of technology. I need some high-powered stuff. Brady, you know where I can buy some?
Yeah, I might.
Oh, hey. So, Florida grand jury accuses Biden HHS of complete responsibility for the migrant children welfare. So they're accusing them of that, I guess.
So it's a grand jury, and I know Florida's not one of the states that can do a citizen grand jury. So that means there's actually some kind of district attorney actually pushing that forward.
Yeah, citizen grand jury. In some states they call that a civil grand jury. That's what they call it here in California.
Andrew, mute yourself, please.
Oh, sorry.
That crinkling is going to hurt my ears.
Well, it's just making me hungry.
Hamsters have very sensitive ears. At least that's what I was told. They look like they do. They got big ears. They got to be sensitive, right?
Sorry, I'm a hamster. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I thought my speaker was on the bottom. I guess it was right on the top.
You working off your phone right now, or are you on your tablet?
Tablet.
Cool.
All right, but anyway, so get back to the story here with Florida and illegal aliens and all that. So, what's the take here?
It's funny. I've known that the government was pretty corrupt for quite some time, and I knew that the government, part of that corruption was working together with some, shall we say, very sketchy parts of the underworld. And there's a reason we have open borders. A lot of vested interests want that. It opens up drug trafficking.
Yeah.
Also helps. You see the U.S. Chamber of Commerce trying to block Trump's wall because they love the cheap labor. I didn't need the.
Well, the Democrats have always been about cheap labor.
Well, and the Republican, and the rhinos, I'd say.
Well, I'm going back to to slavery also, but anyway, go ahead.
I never needed all the pedophilia rumors to be true. All the child trafficking stuff that's going on in the world. I did not need that to be true for me to want to take these people down.
Right.
But it sure does seem like it is true, and it's just. It's a little added incentive, and it's just the human tragedy shows you just how demonic these people are, to just not care at all about their fellow human beings, and to do that to children, and to even allow it to be done. And our government is absolutely complicit. And it's not just the Biden administration. This goes back decades. Ever since the CIA partnered up with the cartels to start bringing narcotics into America to sell on our streets. Especially in the inner cities. When I hear black people talk about systemic racism, I go, you're correct, but you're pointing your finger at the wrong people. You absolutely have been discriminated against deliberately, institutionally, etc. But you're pointing your fingers at the wrong people. It's the government doing it to you, and the people that benefit from that. It's always
people that they trust as their allies.
Well, yeah, the ones who are giving, the ones who are promising them more stuff and pointing the finger at, people who actually don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So That's what happens when you get to control the media and the institutions of higher learning. You get to shape the narrative, and I think that's the battle we haven't started winning yet. Although, judging from CNN's ratings and some poll numbers, maybe we are winning the information more than I get.
Well, we are winning across the board. The problem is they've got so many so many sticks stuck into different places that sometimes we don't think so. It's hard to realize that. But
And again, they get to control the headlines.
yeah, when you control the message and the headlines and a few other things, and you're able to commit the F word regularly, then yeah, people think they're then the minority. They think it's over or whatever. But I think we are winning. I think the majority of the people are sick of this. One wonders if there is a thing on the horizon that could be a flashpoint, that could be what some people think is on its way, because you got to keep certain things dry in order to be ready for that. But we'll see.
Andrew, unmute yourself now that you're not making noise.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the family's in here. I'm sorry. I was helping my wife with something. What were y'all saying? Sorry.
Doug's talking about it. What's the big flashpoint going to be to really?
I don't want to use certain words because I know that algorithms have this tendency to freak out over certain things said, but as opposed to say the war for independence in 1776, there was another war that came after that from a country in Europe that wound up with a dictator named Napoleon. That war before Napoleon, that kind of thing is what might be on the horizon, and that's a lot of ugly things, guillotines flying, all kinds of stuff. So I'm wondering if something like that might be on the horizon because the powers that be have been so good with the messaging and with the F word and all kinds of other things that is going to get to the point where that people are going to feel like that's their only thing that they can resort to. Now, that said, folks that are our allies are not those kinds of people. So it will be a lot of pushing and poking in our chests by the other side before a reaction of that nature would ensue. But one wonders if that could be on the horizon.
Well, yeah, we always warned about, as ballistic as the left went about Trump, and they kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Mm-hmm. They should be very careful what they ask for, because if Trump doesn't succeed, what comes after him will be a Napoleonic figure. History's shown this quite a bit. And we remember the helicopter rides in South America, how they dealt with communism. The pushback will be what Donald Trump is relatively benign in the way he treated his enemies. Mm-hmm. What comes next probably would not be under that scenario, and I very much want to avoid that.
Right.
Well, I think it's because he doesn't feel like he needs to, be. Maybe he feels like the best way to handle the enemies is to be more diplomatic. Like with Rocket Man. He loved talking about Rocket Man, but
oh yeah,
it's one of those things where you don't have to show yourself strong. I wonder if Trump has ever read The Art of War.
Of course he has.
No doubt in my mind.
Because the way how he approaches things, the best way to handle your enemies by it's always like opposites. Like if you want to seem small, if you want to grow big,
there are different tactics depending on what the situation is. Yeah, but Donald J. Trump is very skilled in those tactics. What he's very skilled at also is to reveal who the enemy is and get them to admit what they are. One example I like to give is when he kind of hammered on the NFL and those SOBs who, and he called them SOBs. Everybody got all upset. But in response, what happened? They doubled down on their hatred of patriotism, the national anthem, and revealed even more so who they were. So he has this uncanny ability to draw them out of the bushes and for lack of a better way of putting it, because I don't want to sound like one of them, but expose themselves.
Well, that was Donald Trump's greatest accomplishment, is he made the bad elements show themselves. They had to expose themselves to go after him. And was reading another article about that. God, I should have brought that one with me. There's some testimony going on right now down at Gitmo, and apparently it's through the, I believe it, 22 years later, we still haven't tried all the 9/11 suspects, but apparently there's some FBI whistleblowers, and there's like 13 of them that are talking about how the CIA was blocking them from information that could have prevented 9/11, and that's going to come out in the testimony of what's his name, the Mad Sheikh, who is supposed to be the plotter of 9/11. And it's interesting that what's come out, because we know in military tribunals they can bury a lot more from the public than you can in regular courts. And what's coming out is ridiculously damning. So that's something I need to get my hands around. I just read one article about it. I need to get back to it.
I was going to say, watch out with Gitmo and military tribunals. Otherwise, all those grifters will start going at it again, where they say like everybody's been assassinated.
Yeah, yeah. They take look. It makes a ton of sense. The original story or the original narrative that how are you going to try all of these people in a broken court system, and some sort of tribunal system always made sense. But as happens in the grifter community, people started taking those stories and elaborating on them, and some of it's to make everything look ridiculous. I have no idea.
They take a few moments in history, and they take those moments to mean something that they didn't mean or they weren't, and then they try to apply it today. A great example are admiralty courts and maritime law, which are two different things. First of all, they're not the same. And admiralty courts did exist. The British did pull that on us. What it means is they disallowed trial by jury, and they appointed the judges regardless of our vote or our say in it or appointment powers, and appointed their hanging judges, and then trials were without juries. That's what that means. We don't have trial. Well, we feel like we do with the 6th day of the first month of a particular year, but we really don't have those courts in play. They haven't gone that far, and those aren't in existence per se. That said, historically they did exist, but when you take a little bit of history and then you try to blow it into something else, for me, it makes it very easy to shoot it down.
Well, people still talk about the fringe on the flag and all that kind of stuff. And I remember when people were really into Michael Flynn and what's her name?
Talking about Sidney Powell.
Yeah, and they're saying she's the only person allowed to do a military tribunal or something like that. And then she publicly comes out and says, "No, I'm not."
Well, military tribunal cannot be applied to American citizens, and when it comes to foreign citizens or persons that have been captured in the theater of war, in other words, persons that have been captured by land or sea, it says in the Constitution basically it's up to Congress what to do on that. So if Congress wants to hold a military tribunal, if they want to hold something else, they want to hold them indefinitely, that's up to Congress. Yeah. So yes, my friends, Gitmo is totally constitutional.
One of the
if you say that, and that's it. Go ahead.
For someone who really wants to understand what happened post 2020 election behind the scenes, I think the very best source of it is about the 85 pages of testimony from Patrick Byrne that he gave to the J6 committee. Mm-hmm. Patrick Byrne is a straight shooter, whatever you think about him. I have not met him myself, but I've done business with people who have. And we were one successful phone call away from maybe meeting once upon a time on a project a few years back. But I'm very convinced that the guy is absolutely a genius IQ. He's a brilliant mind. So I enjoy listening to him talk quite a bit. He also, in his own words said, yeah, I worked for the U.S. government. They recruited me to try to take out Hillary and try to set Hillary up, which is interesting because it shows you all the different moving pieces in the Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. That being said, if his testimony, and he has no reason to give any false testimony at all. He's got everything to lose. The guys are
And who is he again?
He was the founder of Overstock.com.
Mhm.
He's been a bit of a celebrity CEO.
Interesting. Okay.
But he's a maverick, and he's put a lot of his own money into fighting back against some of the shenanigans. Hi, Doug. Over the last 5-6 years. So look, I don't even know who I can trust of all these people that are the names we're talking about. I literally don't trust many people that aren't on this call right now. When it comes to that, I'm always going to keep my my cards close to the vest. But what he said is, Patrick Byrne is a businessman and a successful one,
Right.
And when they were all huddling together after the election, trying to figure out what to do, there was 2 legal teams involved, and there was Lynn Woods and Sidney Powell's. And Patrick Byrne, who had a lot of people that were coming to him, and it was just scrambling at this little camp, the hotel where everyone's camping out. And Patrick Byrne couldn't believe how poor the organization and communications were between those legal teams, and how they were, playing all kinds of territorial games. And he said it was an absolute disaster in that way. And it's fascinating testimony when he talks about it. And my opinion of Sidney Powell dropped quite a bit. It sounded like there was a lot of ego involved, and that Trump's got some great attorneys around him. The ones who aren't afraid.
Well, what's your thought on Lynn Wood?
I think he was a Democrat until like 2017 or 2018. I think he's thrown a lot of very good patriots, including Michael Flynn, under the bus, and he's committed flame wars. And I have no idea if the guy's just full of his own ego and doesn't understand how the real world works, or if he's a grifter or a plant.
Yeah.
Now I've got zero trust of Lynn Wood. Sidney Powell, I think, is probably well-intentioned, if not as effective as we would have preferred her to be.
Yeah. Here's a question I'm gonna pose to Doug, and I guess you can answer this. And if Doug chooses not to answer, I'm okay with that. But I mean, as far as the whole 17 movement since 2020, do you think it's affected the view of things positively or negatively in regards to how the Constitution actually works and how things are supposed to go versus how people want them to go? And does that make sense?
Sort of.
Well,
when you say 17 movement,
the letter,
Oh, that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Does that make more sense now that you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, now that I know what you're trying to say, I'm like, 17. What the hell is he talking? All right, 17th letter of the alphabet. Okay. It's funny because Brady and I have a mutual friend that is neck deep into all of that. And I followed it. I enjoyed it. I thought a lot of the information was entertaining, and I thought a lot of what was being said was good things, but I was not fully convinced that there was necessarily someone on the inside or something like that. And my fear when something like that emerges is you give people too much hopium, sometimes they stop fighting. And I want the ugly truth to be out there. I don't want an image of someone that's going to ride in on a white horse, because if you have that image, you're waiting for a dictator. I don't want someone on a white horse. I don't want some dictator to save us. I want us to save us, first of all. Secondly, when it came to that, to answer your question about attention, I do think that a lot of people, because of that, did seek out people like me to learn more about the Constitution. And then some of them were open-minded enough to be walked back from the ledge. I've got a number of those people in some of my classes. I've got a woman, as a matter of fact, in my Chino class who, when she first started coming to class, I mean, she was all about that, as well as national sovereignty and a lot of other things that I couldn't use the words of, and the corporation theory as well. And while she still has some leanings in that direction, I've walked her back from a lot of stuff, and she understands the corporation theory better and doesn't fall for it so much, and so on and so forth. And and she sought out my class because of that stuff. So to answer your question, I do think that movement, the 17th letter of the alphabet or whatever else kind of went along with it in that time period, did send a lot of people in that direction. Unfortunately, it also sent a lot of people in a direction that was just wacky doodle. Suddenly we got now people asking me, who do you think's really in control, the Greys or the reptilians? And those people
The Federal
who were kind of
Galactic
getting into that, I'm like, yeah, love you, see ya, I'm out of here. I can't be a part of that. But I do think you're right that for some people it did encourage them to seek out more constitutional understanding for sure.
So would you say a mix of positive and negative?
Yeah, I think there was a mixture. I think some people and the people that it wasn't positive on, they were probably going to be chasing after something anyway. So I don't think it's the fault of that. It just so happened to be the thing that kind of sent them in whatever direction.
Sure.
Some people though are able to reason. They have like this thing called critical thinking skills. I know it's shocking. And those are the people where they went, you know what? Okay, I'm hearing this. I got to find the truth. And then they seek out someone like me.
I think it's also our natural, and Brady, you could go ahead here in a second. I think the reason why that grew so fast is the same reason why people love one of those murder mystery books, like the Who Killed the Butler, that one.
Yeah.
Like people love a good mystery. People love a good like drama story.
So you think the mysterious nature of it drew them in?
I would say that too.
Possibly.
Like,
I think the biggest reason is because people want this to be fixed. They want the hope. They want us to be, and because I get all the time people say, "Yeah, but what do we do?" And when they say do, they mean right now with an instant gratification answer. Yeah. And my response is, you're not going to get instant gratification.
Yeah,
this is a long game.
Yeah, I think also people are looking for a savior, and
right.
As much
and like I said, you start doing that, you open the door for dictators.
Yeah, and the only savior that can ever rescue us on a white horse is Jesus. That's it.
Well, good point.
That's it. Anyone else, they're just going to let you down, even Trump.
So this is obviously a topic that I've been having discussions about for 6-7 years, and I give number 17 a heck of a lot of credit for inspiring what was a pure truth movement. People were waking up to say there's something wrong, and this is someone who's out there. Whoever made those posts, who was dumping an awful lot of factual stuff and a lot of quote unquote proofs that are really hard to refute. So
I mean, could you actually verify them, or were they just speculation? Or
at what point in time is it mathematically impossible to be a coincidence? And we passed that a long time ago.
I don't believe in coincidences.
Well, neither do I. And we had that conversation. All the things that keep lining up in front of me in real life. But I need a better word than coincidence. But anyways, the long story short,
chance
is I no, not at all.
Well, as I've told my audiences often, in the Hebrew language, which is God's language, there is no word for coincidence. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I love that one. That's interesting. I think you were the first person who I ever heard that from. It kind of blew me away. I go, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. No, I try to rely. I try to stick with evidence-based. I talk about things that I have evidence for, and when I'm speculating, I try to make it very clear that I'm speculating, which is what I'm going to do right now. But it's entirely possible that the original narrative might have been accurate, that the story rang true at the time, and it's entirely possible that whatever quote unquote the plan was foiled because the bad guys have their own resources and they can read boards too. It's also entirely possible that this is still going on. I don't think there's galactic white hats running around fighting underground tunnels and stuff like that. That to me is a little bit on the ridiculous side. But at the end of the day, I put myself in try to picture myself, someone who's aware of what's going on in the world with access to a ton of information, with a good conscience, realizing something has to be done, finding other like-minded people within various parts of the government saying, could we, what should we do to get this, to fix this country and keep these absolutely demonic oligarchs from destroying the world. So is that possible that there are some people that were and are working behind the scenes? The answer is yes, of course it is. But we don't know the truth. I have no evidence one way or the other. So I'm keeping an open mind to most of that.
And I'm going to add to that is I don't think it's a collective effort. I think we have a lot of individuals that are on the inside that are helping the cause. And kind of gets back to our story earlier where you're talking about the stenographer that's like, hey man, I overheard this, or I was a part of this, or whatever. We early on with everything, we've always said, how could all this stuff happen and nobody talk? Surely somebody's going to eventually talk. And I think we're starting to see that. I think that stenographer that you were talking about earlier, that kind of blowing the whistle, so to speak, is evidence that those people are there, that there are people on the inside that are maybe not necessarily allies, but straight shooters. Go, okay, well, I don't agree with the Trumpsters. This is wrong, and this is criminal, and somebody needs to say something. But they have to be careful, because if they say it too soon in the wrong crowd, well, then the Clinton list gets longer.
Andrew alluded to, the grifters and everything like that. Well, you'll notice there's an awful lot of influencers who are, claiming a lot of followers, although you can purchase those pretty cheaply and get bots to follow you to make it look like you're doing more than you are. But
but it drives me nuts. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, they all, and I've mentioned this on this show before and others, they all showed up in May of 2020. And that's when, this whole thing started getting we started seeing some really crazy ideas out there. So I think that was probably deliberate infiltration by some people who do not have our best interests at heart. I think it's more than just grifters.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also like a lot of, to kind of elaborate, like it wasn't just like weird. It was just like, are you okay? Like seriously, like I was worried about some people. I'm just like, but anyway.
And there's so much infighting behind the scenes of the different influencers and people who are in part of the truth movement or just looking for truth. There's backstabbing going on. There's coalitions. There's cliques. And you can tell who's just a pure grifter, and but there's others who we thought were on the right side, and now they're going at it online with someone who I also thought was on the right side. So well, I'm holding my cards close to the vest.
So on the note of the Galactic Federation, I have a fun little question for y'all. And, two questions, okay? Well, okay, 3 questions. Let's make it 3, because I know Doug's going to hold me to it if I ask 2, but then end up asking 3. Have y'all seen Star Wars? Like, do y'all know of it?
I've seen all of the episodes, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but I'm also a huge Star Trek fan, so I'm a weird one. I like both. But anyway, go ahead.
You like socialism, because that's what both of them are.
Well, sure. I like sci-fi, and like I told you earlier, for the last 100 years, the sci-fi writers have been writing about what's going on right now. So I don't know if it was hope that they were hoping it would happen, or they were warning us it would happen. But either way,
hey Brady, what car do you drive? I win.
We're going to go there again.
Sorry. Oh, by the way, quick plug. If you are interested in car content, feel free to go to my Instagram, the German Technician, or you go to thegermantechnician.com, which will take you to my Instagram.
I didn't know you were doing that. Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, I found the article.
I enjoy my rice burners. Thank you. But anyway, go ahead.
I found an article that I talked about earlier, and I'm going to share a little bit of it with you.
Well, hold on. Let me ask my questions real quick. This is a fun thing. I want to make a light.
Yeah, all 3. All 3.
Yeah. Well, I asked 1. All right. Can y'all guess who my 2 favorite Star Wars characters are?
Well, if it's someone that reminds you of yourself, C-3PO. No, I'm kidding.
So I guess I'm really only asking Doug this, but
probably I knowing you well enough, I'm gonna guess. Boba Fett.
I've got a guess.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, he's got to be a Chewbacca fan, man. He's got the beard going, and he likes to fix things.
Yeah, it's like
you were really close, Doug, on one of them. You were really close on one of them.
Okay.
One of them was Din Djarin in The Mandalorian.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. Now, my favorite growing up and even now, see if you could guess it.
I dressed up as R2D2 for Halloween when I was a kid.
Well, I've always been a Han Solo fan because I like the attitude, you know, and the gunslinger and all that. That was who mine was. So I'm gonna guess you're in that ballpark.
Darth Vader.
Interesting.
You nasty little traitor. No, I'm kidding.
Darth Vader has always
I
been
have
my
to admit,
favorite.
though, one of my favorite lines from one of the movies is actually from episode 4 when Leia's talking to Darth Vader and she says, "The tighter your grip, the more systems will slip through your fingers." And that's how I feel about the left. The tighter their grip, the more slips through their fingers. I think it's a great line.
Okay. All right. Well, my third question is, who is your favorite? Which I already know now. Han Solo.
Well, Han Solo is one of them, for sure.
Who's the other one?
And then, go ahead, Brady. Let me think, because I'm trying to remember the name.
Oh, I haven't given this one a whole lot of thought in about 20 years, so I'm not going to have an intelligent answer. I'm chomping at the bit to share my article, though.
Go ahead.
All right, give me a second. I think this is important. I think it's going to end up being an important story.
While he's looking, the lock cracker guy in one of the newer ones that was played by he's just an evil dude. He was a double agent, but he's the one that explains how the weapons manufacturers were selling to both the Empire and the Rebellion. Oh, what a surprise!
Huh, that sounds like real life.
Yeah, exactly. That's the reason why I got kind of a kick out of it. I'm trying to
I
remember
wonder
the name
how
of the
much of
character
those.
now. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, okay, yeah.
All right. So this is an article about this stuff I was talking about with Gitmo. This ex-FBI agents, plural, are accusing the top CIA and FBI officials of a 9/11 cover-up. The CIA said to use Saudis, others for illegal domestic spy operations. I'm going to put the link in the chat because it's very lengthy, but I gave you a brief overview. But it starts out pretty interesting. Weeks before 9/11, an angry New York FBI agent, probably a straight shooter, nearly came over the table at CIA officials who were blocking him from obtaining intelligence about 2 al-Qaeda terrorists who would soon take part in hijacking an American Airlines passenger jet and crashing it into the Pentagon. I hope Ron Partain watches this because he maintains that it was not a jet, it was a missile. The counterterrorism agent says someone is going to die in a bitter email shortly after the 2001 encounter. This is pre 9/11. This was going on. It was FBI and CIA, so there were some straight shooters trying to do the right thing. And that's how this whole thing reads. But there's a section called a remarkable document. It is nevertheless remarkable for its account supporting the veracity of long public, yet highly disturbing allegations that top CIA officials, including Director George Tenet, intentionally withheld vital intelligence from the FBI that might have prevented September 11 attacks. And this whole thing, I mean, it's a very long article, as you can see, but it's a story very much worth reading. We don't have time to get into it. This is basically going on. This is military tribunals going on in Gitmo for some of the most highly ranked suspects that have been held for 20 years. Tracy says it absolutely was a missile. Yeah, and I understand exactly why you say that, because we do not have any actual footage of plane wings or anything like that.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting, isn't it? I don't know. There's a lot of people. Again, I'm not a building architect or an engineer or a geologist or nothing, but
do you know what a woman is?
Huh?
Can you tell me what a woman is?
Well, I guess I have to be a biologist according to one of the justices. So
It's amazing.
But yes, I do know what a woman is, unlike her, who is a woman, ironically.
Yeah,
Anyway.
you brought up something interesting by mentioning the justices. So you guys all know Dianne Feinstein, who's obviously near and dear to us Californians' heart, as she's been misrepresenting us for my entire adult life. Is basically 89 years old and pretty much further gone down the dementia trail than Joe Biden. And there's talk of like pushing her out. And but the neat thing about it is because she can barely show up, and it's completely put a stop to Biden's judicial appointments. So that's why some of the Democrats are trying to say maybe it's time for her to go. But that's a very interesting story, I think. Of course, what happens, Doug, when Feinstein's unable to continue as a senator? Who gets to name her replacement?
Well, it really depends on how the state has done it. The governor can or the legislature. Now we're talking the 17th Amendment. It's supposed to be the legislature. But if the legislature is not in session or they give that authority to the governor
can. Which is interesting because in 2021, Kentucky changed their state law. Mm-hmm. And we've heard the talk about Mitch McConnell stepping down.
Well, that happened in Massachusetts too. That's where that Scott Brown got everybody ticked off because he got appointed when it shouldn't have been a Republican. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, so I guess what happens is the party of the and by the way, this shouldn't be constitutional because political parties don't exist in the Constitution. You can't say that a political party gets to appoint the appointees, but basically the Kentucky Republicans, which is the Kentucky GOP, has pretty much been dominated by McConnell for a very long time, or the McConnell group. They get to pick 3 nominees that the Democratic governor has to choose from. So at least he can't appoint a Democrat. So that's why they did that. That's why that law was put into place. When Beshear became governor, they were a little bit worried about McConnell's age. More interesting is when McConnell steps down as the House minority leader, who's going to step into the role. And they're all jockeying for position. Now, who should be who would we like to be the Republican leader in the Senate? There's maybe 3 candidates that I would put up with. Maybe 3.
Jordan.
He's a congressman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
in the Senate, I would say probably Rand Paul should be on that list.
Should be, but he won't.
Yeah.
He's on my list. I'm still a Josh Hawley guy, and I would.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, he's been on the right side of a lot of issues, and he comes down pretty hard on others. It's just tough, though. I mean, the Senate's far less trustworthy than the House of Representatives when it comes to conservatives.
Hey, did y'all catch that? Have y'all seen anything from Tucker Carlson recently?
I'd never miss a minute of Tucker when I've probably fallen asleep to it the last few times, but no, I watch all of Tucker.
Yeah.
Do you really, or are you being sarcastic?
No, I do. Tucker Carlson and Dan Bongino are the 2 shows I never miss.
So then I watch Tucker when I can and Dan when I can, but I don't get a chance to watch a lot of stuff. And to answer your question, the character's name is DJ, Underworld Codebreaker, played by Benicio del Toro. I love how he plays the character.
What was that one more time, that character?
DJ. It was Underworld Codebreaker. Remember, they're looking for the Master Codebreaker? And it's the second to last movie, The Last Jedi.
Oh, okay.
In order to break the codes, in order to get into the Death Star thingamajiggy.
Oh yeah, okay.
Wait, is that not one of the first 6?
No, that's the one
second to last movie.
Over.
So one of the first 6, or after that?
No, it's the last 3. It's the second one out of the last 3.
Okay.
The Disney Star Wars is
anything after the first 6 is just garbage.
No, I disagree. I enjoyed them.
Oh, Doug, I hate it when you're wrong. Anyways, I'm not.
I'm not wrong, and I like the Star Trek reboot too. So screw you.
Wait, the Star Trek reboot was phenomenal. The stuff they started making around 2010. They did like 3 really good movies.
Yeah,
they stuck so well towards the original storyline.
They changed it. They changed it on the different timeline, but they gave you so many Easter eggs that they tied into the original that it was fun.
Yeah, it was one of the very few. Very rarely when Hollywood tries to repeat itself does it come across well, but that is actually one that.
I have to admit the third one wasn't as good as the first 2. The first 2 were great, but But no, I like the last 3 Star Wars movies, but Benicio del Toro's character as the codebreaker that isn't the master codebreaker they're looking for. Instead, he's a kind of an underworld guy. I love his character. I love his attitude. I love the way he's like, "Oh, look, they're making weapons for the, the Empire. Oh, look, for the rebels too." And just the look on his face and the way he does it and all of that jazz. His whole character is played so well. But anyway,
So here's a prediction. The next Star Wars is going to make the Empire out to be the good guys and the rebels out to be the bad guys. Why? Because now Hollywood's people are in power and they are the Empire.
well, not only that, but the Empire's not going to be the good guys, but the stormtroopers are going to start walking with a sachet.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Hey, so anyway, Tucker Carlson was talking about how Michael Jackson was on the news recently. Did y'all see that?
I missed that one. That went past me. What do you got?
Well, you'll have to pull up the video. It's hard to explain. Just type in Tucker Carlson, Michael Jackson news.
Let me see what I can come up with.
Hey, Doug, I'd have to disagree with you. The last 3 were terrible.
No, well, that's because both of you don't know. Forget it.
Have you seen The Mandalorian? That's pretty good.
I have not seen the show, and I've had everybody that has seen it has been disappointed with it.
Really?
Everybody that I've talked to, everybody. So that tells me that you can't be trusted when it comes to those last 3 movies.
Well, your comments on the last 3 tell me the exact same there, pal. Hey, fella. I think The Mandalorian was fantastic. So,
Hey, Andrew.
And the audience is going, "Stop talking about Star Wars."
We came here to talk about the Constitution and how to save the world, and you're out there in fantasy land.
Hey, let me tell you something. In Star Wars, Queen What's-Her-Face in the 3rd one was talking about how liberty dies.
Liberty dies. I was just thinking of that. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time. So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause.
Yes, it ties in. See, Star Wars ties in. Wait a minute. Maybe there's something to that. Interesting. Anyway, did you find it?
I'm still looking.
Tracy agrees with you, by the way.
What'd she say? No way, Mandalorian. See, thank you, Tracy. It was good and is good. And in fact, I'm gonna watch. I guess also because I'm one of those, like
you see that body that just appeared.
Yeah.
Yeah. It said, and it, by the way, is my wife. It's past 6:30.
Well, maybe we could close on this because I think this news video is very important.
Well, she wants me to take her out to dinner is what she wants.
Oh.
Hang on. I think I found a video for you. See if I got the right one.
And then let's show everybody. This was.
Yeah.
This
Now that we're
blew my
done talking
mind.
about Star Wars, get back on the topic at hand.
I didn't even realize I was still sharing my screen. Sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
We didn't mind.
It was a good headline. All right. You should be able to see a YouTube video up.
Yep.
And you should be able to hear it.
How can that be? Honestly, we have no Michael Jackson talking on television. How can that be? Honestly, we have no idea. We're not theologians here. This is merely a news program. We can only show you what we saw. Here it is.
That's not it.
See? Michael Jackson.
Hey, best I could do.
Okay, so he
What in the
played.
hell did we just watch?
I have
So
no
he
idea.
played. He was talking about how Michael Jackson was on live TV, and he showed an interview of Nancy Pelosi.
There you go. Talking about the plastic surgery. Sure.
It was so funny.
Okay, I got you. I missed it. Yeah. Well, I tell people that's why you rarely see Pelosi smile because she's afraid her face might crack.
Or maybe she just can't smile.
Kind of stuck in that post beauty queen look.
Makes you
No,
want
of
to
course.
smack her in the face.
Now, of course, Nancy Pelosi came out and actually criticized fellow Democrats for attacking Dianne Feinstein. Gee, I wonder why. Get some old hag that's too old to do the job, needs to be moved aside. Yeah.
Tracy says, "Dude, that is old."
Well, I said it was 3 days ago, and I searched the YouTube by upload date, and that was the best I could do. Hey, I was on the spot. My search engine is limited.
man, I wonder if I can find it.
Speaking
Okay,
of
now, that all said, thank you for spending the time with me. I got to get because I got a wife that's asking me to take her out to dinner. But I will say this: when it comes to the things we talked, did you catch what we were talking about earlier about eminent domain and all that, Andrew?
I did not.
Okay, so we did have good topic there, but not that we haven't had any afterwards. But I want to personally apologize for Andrew pushing us towards Star Wars. It's all his fault.
hey,
I'm
I'm
okay with that.
teasing you. I'm teasing.
I'm okay
you.
with that.
Andrew's always going to take us towards aliens. You know that. You know.
Not towards aliens.
Well, since the Galactic Empire is getting ready to take control, right? Or the Galactic Federation. I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's Galactic Federation, white hats. You need to get it right. Otherwise,
Why isn't your wife making dinner for you? Says Tracy. Because my wife can't cook. I usually cook.
why?
And since I'm not cooking, that means I have to take her out.
Friday night date nights. It's a good tradition.
Yeah, we usually go out on Friday nights anyway.
Hey, Andrew, I'll stick around with you for a bit.
Yeah.
We don't.
Sure,
we don't
that's
need
right. My wife is Mexican and makes no Mexican food. She's the oldest of 7 girls, and her dad treated her as a son. But she could change the oil of the car, though.
See, that's value. There's value there.
I think I'd rather have
That's value.
I would rather have the Mexican food.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the way I see it. If she can't cook, but she could change oil, hey, that's just as good. Just in a different way.
And she likes to do yard work, which is a happy moment for me because I hate that stuff.
So really, what y'all are doing is y'all are being a team. You hate doing oil changes. She loves doing them. She hates cooking. You love doing it.
I don't hate doing them. I have no problem her doing it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But of course, now with the newer cars, we pop up the hood, we look at it and go, yeah, no.
Well, here's something fun. Speaking of newer cars, the shock to me after working on Benz,
And Tracy, I can change the oil and cook. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The most interesting thing now is that Mercedes got rid of the dipstick tube and went to electronic, which I know people are like, oh, my Honda's had that forever. The Germans do things the way they do, and also they actually give patents and ideas to other companies to see if they stink before they put it in their cars.
Anyway. So who got rid of the dipstick? Mercedes.
So what they did was
we're waiting for Washington to get rid of their dipstick too.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that now if all you need is a screwdriver in order to change oil on a Mercedes, because there's a drain plug on the bottom that has a slot for a screwdriver, so you can unscrew it, let the oil drain out, put the new plug in, tighten it. Because it's a lock.
A Warhamster, you're sort of right. You are still allowed to change your oil in California, but you're not allowed to take your oil anywhere except for certain places to take it, and then you have to have like a license or something. So they made it impossible for you to do it.
Did you see the?
No, that's not true.
Did you see the comment? Did you see the comment I put in the chat, Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't dispose of the old oil here in California. You have to be licensed in order to do that. It costs you a lot of money. It costs you more to dispose of the oil. The fee you got to pay also because only certain. It's a pain.
I heard something where they said that you could actually get tax benefits if you
Tracy
send a video.
O'Reilly's doesn't do that anymore here. I've tried.
So
I could have sworn I heard somewhere that the governor of California said that he'll give tax benefits to those who throw used oil on Republicans. Is that right?
Yeah, something along those lines. No, but no, I don't think that actually happened, Andrew. But it is.
It did not. I was just kidding. That was a joke.
Well, no, but he's done worse than that because all these little silly rules they keep passing in California, basically all these taxes to dispose of your oil and all the FFPs, these go to these NGOs that funnel money back into the Democratic Party. This is how the damn grift works,
right?
And this is a constitutional show. So let's circle it back as we're not talking about aliens. Of
course, you could use oil for date night, but that's never mind.
How do you? My question is, how do you unwind these legions and these of NGOs and nonprofits that are totally intertwined with the government, and it is a money laundering labyrinth. And when people start talking about burn the whole damn thing down, it's going to be hard to unwind this stuff. And and this is why it's so important what Doug teaches and I help him try to promote is the only way you're going to do this without ungodly amounts of damage is the only way you beat really bad ideas is with a much better idea. And
Well, like I've told people, two things. Number one, you get your war, whatever, and what do you do after if you win? What do you do? Do you know what system you set up? You know what you probably wind up with a worse dictator than you already have. Number one. Number two, on my last comment, did you notice how Brady didn't skip a beat, didn't get interrupted, and just continued on? You're talented, man. You're talented.
Well, I've become the king of the sarcastic straight face. One of these.
I'm dying over here because Doug is talking about lube in the bedroom when he just got done talking about how we just got done talking about oil changes.
Hey, man,
Doug, one of these days
I've got a wife out there waiting for me. That's all I got to say. Okay,
Andrew, you want to stay on for another 10 minutes?
Sure.
Okay. All right, guys, I'm gonna sign out. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America. God bless you. I'll see you guys next time. I will be on the radio tomorrow from 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific on KMET1490am.com.
Tell Virginia I said hello and have an enjoyable dinner.
All right, very good.
And watch The Mandalorian.
Well, I have to be willing to pay for that, and I don't have whatever it's on.
Oh, I'm sure someone's pirated it by now.
Perhaps. All right, guys. See you later.
It's probably in like Hindi or something, but I'm sure they did.
I could find it. I have a nephew who's like 21 years old. He showed me how to find everything on the dark web.
Yeah, and actually, you found I can only imagine on BitChute.
Yeah, BitChute's a very interesting platform. We got to get into that one of these days about these different platforms. Now that I'm learning a lot more about some of the.
Well, I do have a BitChute page and Brighteon page and Rumble page and a couple of YouTubes. But anyway, all right, I'm out of here. See you guys later.
All right,
see you
later.
Doug.
So you have a nephew who's on the dark web?
With kids that are like 21 years old right now, pretty much grew up with knowing how to get around paywalls and all that kind of stuff. So I learned some of it myself because. I kind of had to, but no, my nephew gave me a few pointers, so I'll give him props. That whole generation is pretty much uncensorable.
Well, the any mention of the dark web just gives me the heebie-jeebies.
I think the dark web's incredibly important. That's how you get away from government control. I mean, they're trying to.
But that's also how you have a lot of very bad things that are shared on there, bought and sold, as well.
Yeah, that's a valid point, and I actually don't have an answer to that other than live in a moral society where nobody wants to buy that crap. But unfortunately, we are human beings, and there's always going to be crappy human beings. Excuse me. That being you and I have always talked about and then the Constitution. This country was built for a religious and moral people and is unsuitable for nobody else. That's a direct John Adams quote. I think it's John Adams, right? Yeah, I think it's Adams. But I've been wrong on my quotes lately. Apparently I'm getting older and slower. No, but more importantly, they're trying really hard to put censorship in. And have we talked about Gutenberg 2.0?
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Now that Doug's gone, I'm not distracted.
This will be about a 3-minute little diatribe. I'll do the short version of it, but I think what we're living through is what I call Gutenberg 2.0. And so if you look at human history going back 5,000 years, it's always been the oligarchs, the ruling class. They had the control of all the information and most of the literacy. We're about 1100, we're about 1300 AD, and we're living through the European Dark Ages. And although the Middle East is pretty enlightened, and some places in the Far East were, but they still had feudalism there too. But what happens in the 1400s? And by the way, back then the Catholic Church had a full monopoly on what the Bible said. So all Europe only had one source and most people were illiterate. They were serfs. Well, Gutenberg shows up and invents the printing press, and the most printed book of all time, of course, is the Bible, and it starts getting distributed. And at the same time, they start doing these pamphlets, what we call newspapers today, and people one hamlet over from another started being able to communicate. They knew what was going on in different places. This was important. The literacy rate explodes in Europe, and this leads directly to the Renaissance and the Reformation, which changed the world. The elites lost a whole lot of their power. You had these great thinkers like Locke and Montesquieu in the 16th and 17th centuries, and these are the thought leaders that led to our founding fathers, and the first time that the ruling class had ever been defeated in human history, which was 1776. Now, the oligarchs, the elite, the cabal, they always wanted to get their power back. They needed to and to do that, they had to take back over the control of communication. The literacy horse had already left the barn, so they had to control what we read, what we saw. So at the beginning of the 20th century, you saw the robber barons starting to buy up all the newspapers. The classic story of J.P. Morgan in 1915, and a couple of steel and shipping magnates bought up 25 East Coast newspapers for the sole purpose of getting the U.S. into World War I with propaganda, so they could make money. That happened. It's in the congressional record. That can't be disputed. So then we get the radio shortly thereafter, and of course, RCA, the radio. These were always elite.
RCA Christian?
No, RCA was the first big radio company was RCA. I don't remember what it stood for, but all the radios.
There's a guy named RC Christian. He was
yeah, that's the guy who paid for the Guidestones of Georgia.
Yeah.
Which
okay.
That was RCA. No, this is RCA.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You and I are like stuttering over each other while you're drinking. Yeah, that's actually not his real name. And there was a guy that knew his real name, but he kept it secret till the day he died.
Yeah, as far as I know, nobody knows the name.
Yeah.
We don't know. I mean, we can guess, but anyway, so you had radio and TV, and that was always controlled. TV and the movies in Hollywood were always controlled by the elites. Hollywood by the mafia, which is interesting, but they controlled the flow of information. In the 20th century, we lost all the ability to exchange free thought, and that because we were programmed by television, radio, and movies, and no coincidence that the 20th century is the bloodiest century in history. We had 2 world wars. That never happened before. So we get up to our century, the 21st, and now we have the internet, and that was the ultimate means of control, and they were going to control it. DARPA invented the internet, etc. All these DARPA-controlled big tech, but somehow they lost control. And how do we know this? Well, post the 2020 election, we've had unprecedented censorship attempts on the internet, and yet the polls keep showing that the truth is getting out more and more. More people are skeptical of the government than ever before. More people are learning, of the atrocities of the COVID lockdowns. The truth is getting out there. So they lost control. The genie got out of the bottle. The horses left the barn. What we're living through is we're breaking free of the information. What's the word I'm looking for? Empire, trying to suppress us, and it's working. Well, the internet is too free, and that really is happening. We're winning the information war. So we're living through Gutenberg 2.0.
Well, I think it's important. That's why, it's important to have the Steven Crowders and the Dan Bonginos and the people that are, because I think more and more, for instance, CNN, I highly doubt that they have anywhere close to the views that Crowder has, for instance. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're trying so hard all these different things, is because they're trying to get the ratings back. But slowly, like we said, that where Leia said to Darth Vader, the tighter you grip, the more things are going to slip through your fingers. It's very true. And the more that they try to control, eventually people are going to find a way around it. And I think people have a need to know the truth, so therefore they're going to do whatever they can to find it. So.
Yeah, anyways, that's my message of hope. I think we keep spreading the truth, and it's that's what we're doing here. It's the whole point of me spending a Friday night chatting with friends and small audience, and hoping we can give people talking points that they can spread. And and you're right about the CNN gets 300,000 views, and you get a guy there's all kinds of people getting over 1 million that are just independent content creators, and
Yeah, and I think that's why YouTube is trying so hard, is because CNN and all that connection with everybody is like, hey, you need to get these people to shut up so we can get our views back and stuff like that. Because, like, for instance, Crowder's always ripping on CNN, and like, for instance, whenever he does like the live streams where he's doing like the State of the Union or whatever, they always watch off of CNN, and then go off their commentary because he's basically just, I think he's just mocking him and making fun of him. It's like,
that's exactly what he's doing, because it's such a target-rich environment. If you want to ridicule propagandists, the mainstream media, I mean, they jumped the shark so long ago. These people are ridiculous. But I still watch it. I will. Well, back when I had a TV, I used to occasionally tune in to CNN and MSNBC.
It's always good to hear what the enemies are talking about.
Exactly. I want to know what the talking points are, and because it's so easy to counter it. I mean, I think the one thing we failed at is nobody's created a really good neutral fact-checking site. It's not there yet. It's an idea I had like 5 years ago, but didn't have the time or resources to do it. But it should have been done. I mean, something that's completely neutral, that could have called out Donald Trump for an exaggeration at the same time calling out Biden for a flat-out lie. Because this guy's making stuff up out of, he's still telling the same stories that were debunked 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Mr. Dementia.
Well, I mean, he even said recently that he's openly just admitting it now, that that they're doing whatever they can to make sure that Trump can't run again.
Well, of course they are. Look, there's zero doubt that Trump's going to win the Republican primary. Zero doubt. And the Trump base is way too strong. So if Trump gets through the general, that concerns the Democrats, because they got terrible economic numbers. They got nothing to run on besides their stupid woke talking points. Nobody's buying climate change. That the whole climate hysteria is backfired. The vast majority of America understands it's been exaggerated and lied about. The whole tranny thing is back. Why do they pull the tranny card and push that so hard? Well, besides the obvious Marxist reasons, of demoralization. Why is that front and center? What's going to be their talking point next year? What would you run on as a Democrat? Besides, maybe you can just say I'm anti-Trump, call him a fascist. But at the end of the day, we're probably
you can only beat that drum so many times though before it's kind of like, okay, what else you got? Because I think even Democrats are kind of like, like, okay, I get it. I mean, what else? I think what people don't realize, like, for instance, the homosexual crowd is actually a very small group, but they talk the loudest. I think it's the same thing with the hardcore liberals, where they're the hardcore ones that are nuts. There's not a lot of them, but they have this huge.
Well, they're fanatical. They're fanatical, and they've got the financial backing.
Yeah,
and they also have the government backing, because they, that's exactly. It's funny that they call themselves anti-fascist, and what they're basically supporting is a system where you have a very powerful central government that's combining with the richest people on the planet to suppress the rest of us. So they are the fascists. That's a definition of fascism.
Well, I heard somewhere one time that makes a lot of sense, where someone was like, they're basically calling Trump what they are.
This goes back to Saul Alinsky. Always accuse your enemy of doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's the quid pro quo impeachment of Trump, because they were actually looking into Biden actually doing a quid pro quo. I mean, that's just a classic. Unfortunately, it works on people that are not informed or are not aware of this stuff. And they've dumbed down our education system. We haven't taught critical thinking. People like us and our audience and people in our movement, we know how to critically think. That's why we're here and having these conversations. We figured this stuff out. But how do you reach the ones who just can't deal with their own cognitive dissonance? I mean, you're succeeding in a country that's on the surface free, and we've been sold this bill of goods that America is this bastion of freedom, and it is to some degree. The Constitution isn't completely eroded yet, and you can do just about anything you want in this country. It's an amazing place. You know,
Yeah.
founding fathers did a great thing, but at the same time, they're also taking away rights tyrannically at a rate that never should have been imaginable in this country. And it's hard for these people to face this. I mean, you got someone who's worked hard, went through the system, believes in it, believes in America. You know, that was just because that's what we were taught. You know, I grew up thinking America is the best country ever, and then I understood all the atrocities we've committed in the name of freedom, and it pisses me off like you wouldn't believe. You know, you know, when our brothers and sisters have gone off to fight wars we had no business being involved in. You know, that stuff really bothers me. But how many of these people are willing to face that and to go through the internal thought process and face the cognitive dissonance? That's the hard part.
Yeah.
So, that's what the information and the culture war is all about, and that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, I think this was a good show. We talked about various topics, and maybe the one thing that we need to leave with people to end it on here is this: is that, well, how you go first? What do you think is the biggest takeaway that people should take away from what we've talked about today?
God, all of the above. No, it's at the end of the day, there is hope, and we're gaining ground every single day. We're winning the information war. It seems like the bad guys are in a bit of a panic, and they look more ridiculous every single day. And there is hope. I think that's the takeaway, is that there is hope.
Well put. Yeah, there's always hope, especially whenever we have Jesus. So
That does
I would
help.
say-
That does
I would
help.
say-
That does help having him on our side.
right. I think the biggest takeaway is well, not the biggest, but one of the things that people can take away from this is take what you hear with a grain of salt. Just because someone on a show says it doesn't mean that it's true. And that doesn't just go for, CNN, but that also goes for, the grifters that we mentioned, where they're saying all these things and, whatever. I call them the Joel Osteen of the truth movement. It's just a bunch of nonsense that all it's doing is just leading people astray and distracting them from what they need to be doing. Like Stephanie, who follows the show from time to time. I don't see her in the chat right now, but I think she's like doing something in political office in her area. I mean, that's really important. Where if you want to do something, quit watching, Scott McKay, and start going to your city council meetings. Start going to your school boards. In fact, get your kids out of public school.
Speaking of which, I have a fun announcement. You
Okay.
heard me talk about a month or so ago. I spent a couple of weekends knocking on doors to get a petition signed to get a leftist, make him go get a special election instead of being appointed to a position for an election he lost. It was up in Fallbrook, California. We got the news a couple of days ago that we hit our limit and the special election is on. And I personally, it looks like I personally got 87% of the signatures needed to do that. So I spent 2 whole weekends, but it paid off. And I actually had a lot of fun and met some great people. And I was never a door knocker kind of guy, because I don't like having but do it, people. I mean, just get involved. It matters. And we made a difference. And we have a school board in Fallbrook that was three parts Republican, 2 parts Democrat. And one of the people that won the election in November had to step down, so it was 2-2. And this board wanted to appoint the guy who lost the election. Well, we said that's not okay. You need to face the will of the voters, and that's when we went out there and knocked on doors and got the signatures. So now they're going to have a special election, and that's good. We had a small victory, and I got to play a part in it. And it feels good to get involved locally and win, and that's a big deal.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I'd say let's wrap it up, because my wife needs to eat, and one of our restaurants that we love closed 17 minutes ago. So
I didn't know Denny's closed.
it's not Denny's. It's a taco place in the area.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, my wife is a big fan of the Mexican food. She was born and raised in Colorado, so she got to experience a lot of those things. Where, like, for instance, in Tennessee, you can't even find actual green chili. Not salsa verde, like actual green chili.
Oh, and I'm a salsa verde fan too. But green chili is good stuff. Hey, I got something to promote, and I'll let you take us home.
right.
Sunday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, I will be. Doug and Alan Myers threw me under the bus again, and told me I'm solo hosting, and I can't do 2 hours of monologue because I've just never done that. So I've got a fun co-host. It's a good friend of mine by the guy by the name of Gordon McCormick. But it's a show that you're going to want to check out on D Live. I think it's like D-Live. Patriot Soapbox, 5 o'clock.
You're going to send me the link.
I'll do that. 5 o'clock, 7. Our conversation will be a little bit different than some of the stuff you've heard us talk about. But Gordon's a really knowledgeable guy, and he will take us into some rabbit holes, and it should be a really fun conversation. So I hope you guys can check that out and spread it around. Should be a good fun show. But at least this time they gave me more than 2 hours notice, because last week Doug just threw me under the bus while I was at Champagne Brunch. Yeah, so I'm like, I'm a few glasses of champagne in. I got to host a show by myself. I go, dude, I would have skipped the champagne if you would have told me that.
Yeah, then I threw you under the bus a little bit earlier today. So
I got tire tracks all over me, brother.
Yeah, well, it's a real challenge right now. Me trying to figure out the schedule, because like me and my wife are literally in the drive-through, and we look down at the time and we go, "Oh no!" So, because yeah, it's just different. We're still not getting used to it, even though we've been here for a few months. It's still throwing us off. So,
well, you'll
anyway.
get settled. You'll get settled in
Eventually, hopefully. But well, I mean, of course we will. But I mean, we just want it to be ready to where we can, get things on time. But anyway, again, I have a new thing. Please support that. It's not anything political. It's purely just cars and repairs, and especially if you have something German and you want to learn how to do something, that is the Instagram for you. And then eventually, if the need is there, I'll put something on YouTube as well. And basically, I'll be, like I'll post a photo, talk about it, or I'll even do a video of a repair. I mean, they're gonna be very good. And my brother actually bought the domain for me because he thinks it'll eventually have its own brand. So we'll see. And no, I do not work on German Shepherds.
I was just saying that doesn't count. Hey, thanks everyone for being here tonight. Andrew, always a pleasure. Thanks for having us on the show. Glad I could help out. Crazy stuff going on in my life. Getting really busy, but we'll do the show for as long as I can. And good night, everyone. We'll hopefully see some of you on Sunday. Andrew, take us home.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week. All right, bye.
Are you going to hit end show or am